Welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy podcast. I'm Ani Anderson.
And I'm Brian Trzaskos. Join us as we explore the science
and art of trauma-sensitive somatic practices and tools.
Strengthen your practice as a coach, therapist, or holistic professional.
Master the art of motivating even the most challenging clients when you understand how to tap into and unlock your client's complete holistic intelligence.
If you want to learn the most cutting-edge, research-supported skills for personal and professional mastery, you've come to the right place. Let's get this conversation started. Hi, and welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy podcast. Ani, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Brian. How are you today?
I am ready for today's topic.
Yeah, you're super
I'm
excited.
super excited for today's topic.
Amazing. So we had a question from a listener. She heard us talking about how we can't find outside of our body what we can't find within our body. What's up with that? How's that work?
Yeah. So the actual phrase, which is from the Upanishads, and we base this is the phrase we kind of base all of our certification programs on. It's so powerful, and the idea is what you can't find in your own body, you will never find elsewhere. That's the actual quote from the Upanishads.
Yeah. So, inquiring minds want to know, like, what's up with that? How does that work,
How does it
Brian?
actually work?
Yeah.
Okay. So
It's interesting, right? Question, because when you don't really understand how it works, then it really looks like what's outside of you affects what's inside of you, and like what's outside of you is real.
yeah.
And if you want to change it, you got to change it outside of you, like, right?
Right. So when I first read that quote, I wanted to understand how it worked too.
Of course.
So I did a lot of research and studying about how does that actually work, right?
Yes.
So this is an ancient quote. What's really interesting is, the ancient seers.
They knew how it worked. They got it.
Because they spent a lot of time
In
nature, but also in consciousness, like
In contemplation.
practicing connection with pure consciousness.
Sure.
And that's where all of the answers to everything exists in pure consciousness.
Right.
So, in our Western world, we spend a lot of time with empirical kind of and research learning.
Spend a lot of time in distraction, Brian.
No, but the way we try to answer questions in the Western world is with research, right?
Sure.
We research with physical matter, like with things that, and by the way, quantum physics hasn't even come to an agreement that physical matter actually even exists.
Right.
So, which is the on-ramp to understanding this quote. To understand this quote, you actually have to kind of take a leap. So just to start with, you have to take a leap. You have to understand and accept from the very first outset that the outside world is not objective. The world you think you're perceiving, this table, this microphone, this cup, they're actually not real. And by not real, I don't mean that they don't have physical form, because they do. They are a pattern, an energetic pattern that shows up within the whole unified field of everything. And the vibrational frequency of the pattern is slow enough where it has tangible form. But ultimately, it's still vibrational information.
So you're saying it's not real because it's vibrational information. Is that why you're saying it's not real?
Well, I'm saying it's not real because...
Or are you saying it's not real because it's subjective?
It's actually subjective. It's not objective. Objective means it has some type of quote unquote, like real, measurable quality about it. And the only reason we can measure it as humans is because we have been taught how to measure it as humans. So let's back up a second, because this conversation can get really deep really fast.
Well, it might have already gotten
there. But so
you said quantum field.
In order to, if you want to understand like how this works, how this really works, which you cannot find in your own body, you'll never find elsewhere. You have to first understand and accept that the outside world isn't objective, it's subjective. The outside world is a projection of how your nervous system has been taught to organize and make meaning of the information outside of your body.
Right, because we know only a fraction of the information that we think we see comes from visual information, a very, very small percentage. But most of the information that we think is visual information is actually our
We're
perception.
actually producing it.
We're
We're,
producing
we're
it.
actually
Yeah.
a vast majority, in like the 90% realm, right? Of what we think we're seeing outside of us, we're actually producing inside of us and projecting it out onto the outside world. So just think about this for a second. If you look at like a flower, okay, a flower doesn't call itself a flower, right? A flower doesn't call itself a flower. A flower is a pattern of vibrational information that you as a human and thousands of years of other humans have been taught to identify that vibrational field by calling it a flower. But the flower doesn't call itself a flower. The only reason it exists as a flower is because you've been taught that it's a flower. Same thing with a tree. Tree doesn't call itself a tree. This cup doesn't even call itself a cup. As humans, we have organized the vibrational information outside of us into concepts
Which are very important for us to be able to live,
to be able to live
right?
and
And
communicate and
communicate.
organize and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But the problem is if we're unconscious, we will begin believing that those things are real. And they're not real, right? A flower is really only called a flower again because humans have been taught that to call it a flower in a sense.
Right. And so that accounts for the idea that you and I will both look at a rose and call it a rose. However, you and I will both look at a human behaving in a certain situation and judge it differently or have different concepts around what that behavior means and how we should interact with it.
Right. So yeah, this actually goes in kind of strata here. So we have the physical world, like a flower, like 100%. Now, if I grew up though in a culture that called a flower a tree,
Right.
then I would know it as a tree and you would know it as a flower because you were taught it's a flower and I was taught it's a tree. Now, who's right or wrong? The flower or the tree don't care what you call it. They're a vibrational field of information. They're operating in a larger field and they're doing what they have been programmed and patterned to do. Humans are the only ones that care about naming things. And then we fight over what they're named or called or that kind of stuff. You really kind of think it was kind of crazy, right? Because we would like get in a fist fight over that's a flower, that's a tree sort of thing based on what we were taught about it. And the flower doesn't care at all. But the only reason you're calling it flowers is you've been taught it. And the only reason I'm calling it trees because I've been taught. And so those are physical things. And so oftentimes we're taught that we can only believe in things that we see as the flower or the tree. But what about oxygen molecules? I ask people this in trainings. Say, well, do you believe in oxygen molecules? Ani, do you believe in oxygen molecules?
Sure.
Can you see them?
No,
Why would you believe in them then?
because I was taught.
Because you were taught that they exist,
Yeah.
sort of thing. And isn't it funny that some things we do see, we do believe in, and other things we don't see, we don't
Do,
believe in or do believe
do
in,
believe in, yeah.
kind of thing? So I just want to basically let's just debunk like what we believe in is we're taught what to believe in, whether we see it or we don't see it. We're still taught to believe in it based on how we were taught
Taught,
to
yeah.
believe in it, right? We believe in what we believe because we were taught to believe in it, whether we can see it or can't see it. So let's let go of the idea that you'll believe when you see it, because that's like totally nonsense.
You'll believe it when you're taught it.
Yeah, basically you'll believe it when you're taught it. That's kind of how it is kind of how it really works. So to your point is that what goes on outside of us, sometimes there's things in quote unquote physical form outside of us, only because that vibrational information is slowed down enough for us to identify it as being more physical than things that aren't in physical form. But even at that, we are projecting out onto the world the meaning we're making about those vibrational patterns because we've been taught to make meaning of them. Outside of us, they just exist as vibrational patterns. We project the meaning out onto them, first of all, from the inside out.
We project the meaning because we are humans and we are meaning makers.
Right.
So we do.
And we're going to project it out there. Now, that also happens for non-physical things, much to your point, right? So behavior is a non-physical thing, but it's still a pattern. It's still a vibrational pattern. So we could both see someone outside of us, theoretically outside of us, because actually, is anything ever outside of us? It's actually not. It's always inside of us. But let's just say for the sake of
Anyway,
let's say for the sake of incorrect but common knowledge that it happens outside of us, right? Even though it's not outside of us, sort of thing. You see where this, so when you're trying to answer this question, this is why I'm saying it gets a little complicated. But I'm also saying that you're doing it already this way. We're already living like this, right?
yeah.
Because if like we are both listening to a speech, let's say someone is given a speech and we're both listening to it, we could feel like dramatically diametrically opposed about what was being said during the speech, right?
Do you remember when we went to see the Dalai Lama?
I do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We went to see the Dalai Lama with friends, and we came out and we were like, wow, I loved it when the Dalai Lama said this. And our friend said, well, I didn't hear the Dalai Lama said
Yeah.
that. But I loved it when the Dalai Lama said this. And we were like, we didn't hear the
It's all
Dalai
right
Lama
to say
say
that.
that.
Yeah, exactly. I love
It's,
it's crazy, right?
it's
So we're sitting like
like,
right,
were we in the same
we're in the same
speech?
room. Yeah, we're listening to the same speech of that person, the Dalai Lama, sort of thing. So you could hear the same words that someone else is even saying, but make completely different meaning about it. Has that ever happened to you,
Yeah,
listeners? Yes, it's
definitely.
happened to you. So is it the thing outside of us then that's real, or is it the way that we are projecting out onto it that's real? It's right. In other words, everything is subjective. Nothing is objective. When you really look at it from a quantum physics, vibrational quantum field perspective, everything is subjective. So let's just kind of build this a little bit further. How does that actually work? Well, inside of our brain, you have a structure called the thalamus, and every tenth of a second, 1/10 of a second, that's 10 times a second at least, you get a wave pulse that travels from your thalamus that goes through all of the connective tissue in your body with what you've been taught about the world, your beliefs, essentially.
And the connective tissue is not just your patellar tendon. Like
It's
it is
it's everything. It's the most ubiquitous tissue in your body. It surrounds all your muscles, surrounds all your nerves. It goes through
just
your gut,
everything.
touches everything. It holds your whole body together, right? And it's electrically conductive. So connective tissue like carries electrical information, which by default then also has electromagnetic field frequencies associated with because of Faraday's law. I bet our listener who asked this question is like, I'm sorry I asked at this point.
Right. Have broken your brain yet?
But this, you want to answer the question of how it works. This is how it works. So literally, there's an
Warned people at the beginning to sit down.
get a cup of coffee.
Seatbelt.
There's an electromagnetic wave field frequency that propagates from your brain and goes through your body and then extrapolates out into the environment around you that basically projects out onto all of the vibrational information outside of you, what you already believe about the world. That's kind of how it works. So the idea is that all of us make meaning about the world before it happens.
We're making meaning right now. What happens
What happens
next?
next? You've already made a meaning about it. So, like, if we're listening to a speech or like watching someone do something and we have diametrically opposed opinions about what just happened, we actually didn't come up with those opinions while we were watching the thing. We came up with those opinions
Or
before the thing even happened.
yeah.
So that's already happening. So right now, actually, if we uh let's just tap into a quote, one of my favorite quotes from Lisa Feldman Barrett, right? So one of our yeah, so she wrote a book called How Emotions Are Made, and I'm going to read a quote right here. She says, "The human brain is anatomically structured so that no decision or action can be free of interoception and affect." Just break those words down. Interoception is sensations or feelings in the body, and affect is kind of like how we feel about those sensations in our body, sort of thing. Okay, but what she's saying is that the human brain is actually anatomically structured so that no decision or action can be free of interoception and affect. In other words, you never make decisions in a bubble. You always make decisions based on how you feel, the sensations in your body, and also how you feel about the sensations in your body, how you judge them. She goes on to say, your bodily feeling right now, listeners, will project forward to influence what you feel and do in the future. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy embodied within the architecture of your brain. So when you hear that, Ani, what kind of lands for you?
Yeah, that's how it works. I mean, I'm just
What's
listening
that?
to the whole thing. Like, if you want to be able to change how you feel about things in 20 years from now, you got to change how you feel about things because otherwise you're going to feel about things in 20 years from now how you feel about things right
Right
now.
now, exactly.
So if you want to feel different in 20 years from now, you got to do something about it. And by the way, in case you didn't get this memo, this is what we do here at the Somatic Coaching Academy. I just want to make that very clear.
Make it very clear. Yeah.
So, but it's true. I mean, people are living their lives and they don't like what they see, what they're doing, how they feel, and they want to fix it, Brian. Not only do they want to fix it, if they knew that they were going to feel the exact same way in 20 and 30 years
Mhm.
from now, unless they do something different, I think the urgency to do something different might just be elevated.
But
Like it's that big of a deal.
yeah, huge. Love it.
And
Love
then
how you're describing that.
once you change it 20 years from now, it's going to be better because you took the time to change it today. I think there's a lot of things. Now, see, you asked me my opinion and now I'm on a roll.
Yep. Mhm.
I think I think one of the things that comes up for people when it comes to change is most people don't change things until things get really bad.
Yeah.
Okay?
Sure.
And if if the things that come up that cause us not to change things in our lives are like I don't have the time, I don't have the money, it's kind of inconvenient, and the world of self development is paved with inconvenience because at some point you've got to make a decision that it's worth it enough to be inconvenienced in the fact that you've got to change something on your calendar or you've got to pay for something now to be able to change things. But we look at the profound impact of taking the time, the energy, the money, whatever it is, to be able to make a change in something that impacts the rest of your trajectory,
Yeah.
it's kind of important.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm done.
Yep. You set?
Yeah.
That's good. That was awesome. Great soapbox.
Okay, thanks.
Loved it. I just want to reflect back to people kind of like an example that may make sense for folks.
Sure.
Okay. So is there anybody out there listening who on a regular or semi-regular basis experiences things like anxiety, kind of desperation, feeling like they are upset, out of control, that kind of stuff? And then you've gone on vacation to a peaceful place and then created some type of drama while you were there, or discovered, let's say discovered some type of drama
Discovered
when you
something
were there because it
drama.
wasn't you creating it.
Right.
You went to this peaceful place, but something happened with the food, or something happened with the check-in process, or something happened with the car,
The
or the
kids.
kid, whatever it was, and you're at this supposedly peaceful place, but you've found plenty of things to be anxious, out of control, desperation about while you're there, right? That happens to people all the time.
Yeah.
So
Because
what's up with that?
you bring yourself where you
You
go.
bring yourself where you go. So this is the same point. So you're already finding outside of you what you have inside of you. It's already happening, right? So the whole idea of what you can't find inside of you, you never find outside of you, you're already finding outside of you what you have inside of you. You have a little smirk. What's going on?
Well, you're just reminding me of remember when we went to see Jerry Seinfeld and Jim Gaffigan
Yep.
in
Mhm.
Montreal,
Yep.
and both of them were doing shtick about how bad vacations are. Like why do we even
Yep.
go on vacations so that and they said like exactly what you're saying, so that we can fight in different places and pay for a hotel room while we're doing it, right?
Yeah.
And the whole arena is just in stitches about the truth of the
Yeah.
situation, that we think we're going to go on vacation and like quote unquote have a good time, but we literally do the same thing we did at home. We just do it and it's more expensive in a different
Yeah,
place.
exactly. So again, so everyone, like the whole, like how many people, 30,000 people that were in the arena, like understood that perfectly.
It's
Like
not just
that
us.
they're having that
Yeah.
experience. Like
Right.
I'm wherever I go, there I am. Like there's that, wasn't it Ram Dass who said, wherever you go, there you are, sort of thing. So that's it. That's essentially what he's saying is that you're already finding outside of you what you have inside of you. And again, that's why we know that if you want to know what's inside of you, just look at what you're finding outside of you, and that'll tell you. So it's already happening. It's already happening. So the thing is, if you want to find something different outside of you, then you have to first find it inside of you. That's what this quote is basically saying. If you can't find it in your own body, you're never going to find it elsewhere. Right now, you can find plenty of anxiety, distress, pain in your own body. So outside of you, you find plenty of anxiety, pain, and distress. When inside of you, you can find centeredness and calm and peacefulness or whatever it is, then you will start finding that stuff outside of you.
So when I get a new client, they tell me what they want to achieve in their life, right? And then I ask them a question. So, for example, the client will say, I really want to feel more safe. I really want to have more fun. I really want to enjoy my life and be in joy more often. And I say, how often do you practice that? And there's a pause, and they're like, what do you mean?
Mhm.
How often, okay, you want to feel joy. How often do you practice joy? You want to feel safety. How often do you practice safety? Like, right?
Yeah, totally.
Makes perfect
Yeah,
sense.
and they would ask that, they would respond to your question that way because when you're under the illusion that the outside world is real, what it puts us in a victim relationship with the outside world, and then we always allow the outside world to determine how we feel inside. But the funny thing is we've actually projected our inside onto the outside, and then we're just seeing the outside and blaming the outside for how we feel inside when that's how we feel inside to begin with,
Well said.
right? So if we really wanted to go into a creator mindset, what we would know is that we are projecting our inside to the outside all the time. And if we want a different outside, which actually isn't even an outside because it's all one unified field, that we're going to practice, to your point, Ani, practicing joy, practicing those kind of things, those are practicing sensory states. Joy is a sensory state. Centeredness is a sensory state. Peacefulness is a sensory state. Calm is a sensory state, right? They're all descriptions of contextual sensory states. So when you practice regulating your nervous system and amplifying and working with the sensations that are the raw data that composes those experiences, then you will start experiencing those things on the outside.
So you are not going to get those things on the outside just by regulating your nervous system. I want to make that
Correct.
very
Yeah.
clear with what
That's
Brian
step
just
one,
said.
though.
That
But
exactly.
it's the
But
necessary step
it
one.
is step one, and it's
And you
important.
can't go on to step two without step one.
Correct. I'm with you. And hear us on this. Hear me now, and what does it say?
Listen now and hear me later.
Listen now and hear me later.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that is step one. But if you really want to change it, you have to do more than regulate your nervous system. I'm just making this point because now that somatic is a buzzword like organic used to be, people think they understand somatic as soon as they know how to take a deep breath or they know how to like feel the difference between hyperarousal, hypoarousal, and
Mhm.
then optimal arousal. Like people think they've quote unquote got it. That is a part of what's going on here at the Somatic Coaching Academy is regulating your nervous system. And then you also get to learn how to reconfigure the inside so that the outside presents.
Right, with sensation-based
It's
tools, right? So
sensation-based
we
tools.
go beyond kind of somatic, like somatic work is a very big umbrella. It
Broad.
just means you're working with the body. The specific somatic work we do here is sensation-based motivation coaching, sensation-based work. So we're not only teaching you how to regulate your nervous system, which is step one, we're also teaching you how to consciously modify and recreate a new sensation base so that you can create a new reality for yourself. That's essentially what we just kind of laid out for you. Like we, again, imagine reality happens kind of outside of us, but it's always a projection of what's going on inside of us. And when you can consciously choose your sensory base, you can create anything you want outside of you. But step one is with that nervous system regulation, which is we do in Somatic Practice Essentials, our level 1 program. So people who take that program certainly become teachers of other people, hold classes and all those kinds of things.
Very, very important.
But most importantly, they're doing it for themselves so they can create a new reality for themselves. We have people come take the Somatic Practice Essentials program who don't go on to do teaching, but for them personally, it's a transformative first step for them. So
because then when you go to level 2, you start to bend reality.
Yeah, exactly.
But you can't learn to bend reality until you know how to regulate your nervous system.
Until you know how to tap into the sensory states that are the raw data of the bending reality.
Yeah. Well, my reality is this was super fun.
Yeah. So hopefully, listeners, that landed in a way where you can make sense of it.
You might have to listen a few times. That's okay. Download it and listen a few times.
That's the basic reason why what you can't find in your own body, you will never find elsewhere.
Awesome. Well, Brian, I would like to find lunch, so let's go do that. And listeners, we will see you next week. Thanks for joining us on this episode.
Have a great one.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope that this conversation will help you improve your practice and change the way you think about your work, your clients, and yourself.
Continue your exploration of trauma-sensitive somatic coaching by listening to more podcast episodes at somaticcoachingacademy.com. You could be the trusted guide that people turn to help them with their most challenging situations and to reach their most precious goals. Thank you for joining us.
We'll see you next time.